welcome to Stories Let's Connect by the Speak Good English movement. My name is Erni and I am the manager for the mobile library services at the National Library Board, and I am also the author of Java Enigma, a book that's published by Epigram Books. So today I will be reading you a special story. It's a story that I had picked out because of personal experiences. So the book is called The Mad Kyoto Shoe Swapper, right, by Rebecca Otowa. And I had chosen this story because of certain experiences I've had when going to temples or mosques in Singapore and, finding your shoes misplaced or even taken by someone. So let's see what the story is about. Alright, so let's begin. Summer was the best time of the year for shoe swapping. In spring, Kyoto buzzed with beginnings. The first day of school, the first day of work, and autumn was alive with alert, sharp-eyed students and academics walking briskly across the precincts of the temples, stimulated by the fiery trees and the spanking, clean, crisp air. But when the days sweltered and steamed, people trickled around in a daze, fanning themselves inattentively until they could plunge into the next haven of air conditioning. Kyoto slept in summer, everyone knew that. It was too hot to do anything else outside. A huge hillside temple, drowsing at noonday, its slanted grey roofs shimmering. In the purple shade of the portico, a sign with the message, "No shoes allowed," stood at the foot of the ancient wooden steps that had been polished slick by millions of stockinged feet. 6 or 8 pairs of shoes were neatly lined up against the bottom step. Their owners had left them there while they explored the high, cool rooms of the temple. Into this deserted space entered Jiro, Mad Kyoto Shoe Swapper. Youngish, black-haired, black-clad, unobtrusive as a beetle, he scuttled across the temple, forecourt, and ducked into the portico. Jiro gazed up with an interested air at the complicated joinery of the wooden ceiling high above. After a moment, he turned his back to the steps and shuffled off his shoes so that they faced outwards. He glanced nonchalantly down at the row of shoes, then mounted the steps and disappeared through the wide doorways. 5 minutes later, he returned and walked purposefully away without a backward glance. But this time, the shoes he put on were not the ones he had taken off. Anyone who happened to notice Jiro would have said he was just a student, head full of equations and girls, taking in a temple on his lunch break from a summer job nearby. But Jiro was not a student, and no one could have imagined the contents in his head. At this moment, his whole being was transfixed by the beautiful, mysterious otherness of the strange shoes, the places where they rubbed and the places where they yielded. He hardly spared a thought for the shoes he had left behind, which of course were not his shoes either. He had swapped them at another temple a couple of weeks previously. He strode on, sweating lightly, the sun scorching his black hair. Jiro's hobby had begun by accident. 3 years before, on one of his solitary walks through the city, he had visited a temple with a storehouse converted into a minute art gallery. After taking in the exhibit of black and white photographs, he had absent-mindedly put on the wrong shoes to exit. His own shoes had been rather uncomfortable anyway, so he was already 100 paces down the path before he noticed his mistake. Retracing his steps, he heard raised voices and peeped around the corner of the building to see a foreigner flapping his hand and fussing in English at a gaping young priest. Obviously, he was complaining about his shoes were missing. Jiro was fascinated and terrified by the flamboyantly angry gestures of the foreigner. It was several minutes before he plucked up the courage to step forward. The foreigner had ranted at him, half angry, half relieved. This gave Jiro nightmare for days, but then the theatrical possibilities of the situation dawned on him. He began to visit temples frequently. and to look for shoes that resembled his own. If the coast was clear, he would put them on, walk briskly away around the nearest corner, and watch to see what his victim would do. He never returned the shoes again. The unfolding drama was just too thrilling to interrupt. The priceless "what now?" on their faces, the dismayed conferring with friends, the scribbling of addresses, the apologies of the priest. Once the show was over, he just walked away. After a few successful swaps and some very entertaining moments, Jiro's enjoyment of the drama gave way to a more interior pleasure. He began to notice the feel of the shoes he had taken. He always walked everywhere. Kyoto was a splendid town to walk in, and there was an indescribable satisfaction in the way these strange shoes, weird and uncomfortable at first, gradually altered until they fitted him so perfectly that they were unnoticeable. He concentrated fiercely on this transition, from the moment his feet slid into the strange shoes until the moment he began to be bothered by their familiarity. It was then that he began to think about another swap. Jiro had fine-tuned his hobby over the 3 years he had been shoe swapping. He was very good at it. He had never once been caught, and he saw no reason why he should not go on indefinitely, as long as he kept to his rules. So, number 1, concentrate on one style and color of shoes. Jiro always swapped black sports shoes, which were the most common of all, and he chose shoes that were approximately as worn as the ones he already had. So swapping for brand new shoes was too risky, and what was the point of swapping for worse ones? Number 2, don't swap too frequently. Jiro limited his swaps to once every 2 to 3 weeks, and he never hit the same temple twice. This was easy to do, as temples and shrines in Kyoto numbered well over 1,000, and many of them had the same ad hoc arrangement. Shoes were left outside with no lockers or supervision of any kind. Number 3, don't call attention to yourself. Speak to no one. Never spend more than 5 minutes inside the temple. It was essential to keep a low profile. A visit of just a few seconds might be noticed, but on the other hand, if he stayed too long, he ran the risk of his chosen shoes disappearing with their rightful owner before he could swap them. Number 4, when entering, decide on the shoes to be swapped as quickly as possible. Put them on without hesitation. This had come only with practice. After several imperfect swaps, which left him limping, he learned to gauge the size by sight when scoping out the shoes. And lastly, wear only those shoes during the interval between swaps. So just one shoes. This was essential in order to maximize the sensation he craved, the lovely way his feet and the new shoes gradually melded together. Jiro sometimes walked clear across town for a swap, but it was worth it to feel the eerily refreshing coolness of the strange shoes at the next destination. Now, the only shoes he owned were the most recent swap. That was the price he paid, willingly, for his obsession. The city sighed with relief as the sun disappeared and cool breezes fanned outward in the twilight. Jiro approached his apartment building, climbed several flights of metal exterior stairs, and unlocked the flimsy door of his flat. Stepping out of his latest acquisitions in the cramped entryway, he entered the tatami room and opened the tiny fridge to get a plastic bottle of tea. Then he paused in front of a large black and white movie still of Bogey and Bergman in a clinch in Casablanca. Smiling crookedly, he repeated his mantra in Japanese. Of all the gin joints in all the cities in all the world, Casablanca was Jiro's favorite movie, and that line seemed to him to embody the essential absurdity of existence. He always greeted the photograph in this way when he returned to the room. Right, so there's a drawing of it like this. Cute, right? This little box in the sky, his bolt hole, was as neat and inconspicuous as Jiro himself. Several black and white movie stills tacked on the wall were the only decoration. Beige curtains framing a completely empty balcony, neutral quilt covers and cushions, nondescript brown mat in front of a spick and span kitchen alcove, all from the discount store. Black clothing on hangers suspended from the picture rail. A low table with a black laptop, an old-fashioned wind-up alarm clock, and a few papers. Jiro kept the room clean and cooked for himself, mostly rice and soup. His daily routine was just as rigidly circumscribed. Early rising, mornings spent at the computer where he managed websites for a living, afternoons napping or walking around town, evenings watching DVDs of old movies in his room. Motionless on his futon, the young man blended so well into the room that he was almost invisible. Excuse me. The voice behind him was loud and firm. Jiro froze, heart leaping in the dark entryway of the temple.
Want to find out what happens next in the Mad Kyoto Shoe Swapper? Stay tuned for the next episode of Stories Let's Connect.